Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here, and today we find ourselves back in the roaring 20s and corruption is on the rise in our city. The mob rules the streets and its reach extends even to the police force, the courts, and City Hall. The mob's crews think they have the reins of the city and they might be right, but the citizens have reason to hope and are proving to the city that forces of good might be down, but they're not out. Speakeasy is a mob-themed hidden role party game which uses creative deception and social deduction. It's for 10 to 40 players, it's for ages 16 and up, and plays in about 75 minutes, and is published by Waxwing Games. Today, we'll be doing a rule school. Well, I'll teach you how to set up and play the game so that you don't have to read the rulebook yourself. Now, I've placed timestamps below me in the description of this video, just in case you want to jump to a specific section of the rules. Well, let's get started. Speakeasy is a mob-themed hidden role party game for 10 to 40 players where some of you are going to be on the mob and secretly trying to figure out who is on your team. You're all going to get different passwords like shake and glass, and you're going to be trying to drop those in casual conversations with others, trying to figure out who's on your team. But there'll be plenty of other people on the other team as the feds, and they're going to be doing the same thing. They're going to be trying to drop passwords like change and peace to other players, trying to figure out who's their leader, federal marshal, who's the enforcer, the vigilante, and so on. And you're trying to figure things out without being too obvious. You'll also be spending some of your currency as points to be able to buy a card that gives you a powerful ability throughout the game. But not only are you trying to figure out who's on the other team, you're also trying to figure out who on your team is the rat that's secretly working for the other team. A moderator knows all the answers, and at the end of the 60 minutes, your team will try to figure out who are the players and roles and passwords from the other team, and who is the rat on your team. The most points wins. To set up, you're going to be the moderator, and you'll be the one to set up and facilitate the game. You'll be playing the game, but in a different role. Moderating is its own kind of fun, and you'll be facilitating, offering strategy tips to players, answering questions, running around after players, and having covert conversations throughout the game. Plus, you'll get the fun of having all the secret knowledge. So to set up, the best thing to do is to separate the cards out into different stacks like this, so it will help you get things together. First of all, you'll have different role cards. In a stack, put all of the mob role cards and all of the feds role cards. There's a couple of role cards that will stay off to the side right now, the femme fatale, and we have a whiskey shipment card and a few rat cards. So you'll have those separated out. You'll have a whole stack of cards that have passwords on them, and there'll be multiple cards of the same type. You'll want to keep these in order so that there'll be a certain amount of cards of each password there, and then in a deck like that. You'll have a set of cards where you can write the password on there yourself for extra cards. There'll be all these +1 point cards and all of these power cards. There's 2 of each of these power cards, so keep them together and keep them stacked like that for now. Now you're going to begin setting this up for the 2 different teams, both the mob team and the feds team. Now here you see a role guide, and what this tells you is each role has another role on the other side that you must match them with. For example, when you're using the boss role for the mob at the top there, on the Fed side, you'll also have to have a federal marshal. Just like if you have the consigliere on the mob side, you'll need to have an untouchable. So whichever role you select, you need to make sure that you have the opposite role on the other side in the game as well. Now when selecting which different roles to use, you can use this guide right here to use roles that either increase deception or increase the potential for action or increase the player knowledge, so you can cater your game for the type of game that you want to have. So here what I'm doing is starting to lay out the mob team. There's going to be a total of 12 players playing the game in total. Half of them are going to be on the mob team, half of them are going to be on the feds team. So half of the 12 players, we have 6 cards here, and these are the 6 roles I've chosen, and these are the first 6 for the mob side on that role guide that we just showed you. Now as you're setting this up, I have them all face up to kind of show you how things go together, but when you're doing this for real, you don't want anybody else that's playing the game to be able to see what you're doing, what the passwords are, who or what, and all these sort of things. So this is going to be done in secrecy away from everybody else. Next, you're going to select passwords for the team. So this single team of mobsters, there's 6 of them, and as you can see in this table here, for a team of 5 to 7 players, you'll be selecting 2 different passwords. Now how these passwords work is there's actually 5 cards of each type of password card, and each card has 2 different passwords on it. You're going to decide which side everyone is playing with the entire game. In this case, let's say we're using the white background. So it is the blue word with the white background. So we're going to be using the password glass. And as you see, with 5 to 7 players, there's only 2 passwords, which means there's 6 players, so 3 of these players are going to get the same password with each other, but they won't really know it. So what we'll do is we'll take 3 of these and we'll just sort of randomly place them here. The ones of the same type that you're not using, don't put them back in the box. Put them off to the side because you're going to be holding these as the moderator, because later in the game there's certain things that will allow other players to get certain passwords from you. So keep those to the side. You'll be getting those later before the game starts. Then you'll distribute the other password being used. In this case, it's going to be shake. You'll give them all one password. And you notice some roles actually have you put all of the passwords for that team under that player. For example, the boss, at the start of the game, you start with all your team's passwords. So they're going to start with all of them and have all the information, but almost everybody else is going to get the single password. Now, any extra password cards, again, from that second one, you'll put to the side. Next, under each role, you're going to deal out 2 of the single 1-point cards for each of the roles. Now, if you're playing with an uneven amount of players, meaning an odd amount, one team is going to have more players than the other. Let's say we were playing with 13 players, and this team, the mob team, has now 7 players on it. How you'll do this is you'll put another role. You'll use, again, using the right amount of passwords per what we had showed you earlier. By the way, if you're playing with the bootlegger, you must use a whiskey shipment card to go with them. That's another little exception. But what you'll do is you'll take one of the point markers from any one of the other players on the team and give it to them. So 2 of the players on the odd team will have 1 point card instead of 2. That makes sure that there's the same amount of point cards between the mob team and the fed team. And now we're back to the 6 players that we had before for the mob team. The last thing you'll do for this team is assign the rat card to one of these roles. Now, a couple of caveats here. Number 1, this cannot be given to the boss or the interrogator when putting it on the mob team. And that's because the boss is very powerful with multiple passwords, and the interrogator is really has some abilities that helps them try to find out who the rat is. So you cannot give the rat to the boss and the interrogator, but you'll randomly give it to any of the other ones. Let's say we give it to the thief here. It'll just go right like this, like that. Now what the rat does is it essentially makes this player secretly be working for the other team. So this player is actually going to win or lose with the feds team, not the mob team, but they're trying to blend in and keep that from everybody else. And then what you'll do is you'll start stacking each of these columns. So you'll take these cards, you'll sort of stack them up like this, and you put it like this. So each of these columns becomes 1 stack of cards. So now I have 6 stacks of cards. Each stack is going to go to 1 player in the game. I'm going to put these off to the side now and just show you how we'd also be setting up the feds. So now we have something similar setting up for the feds team. We have 6 players on that team, and we've used all of the matching roles that went with the mob role that we showed you in the role guide earlier. Now, these players also got passwords. Again, they're not going to know what other players' passwords are, but again, here, because we're playing with between 5 and 7 players, we're using 2 different passwords, and the federal marshal, just like the boss on the mob team, they get all the passwords for that team. And again, all extras of these that are not used are going to get put to the side that the moderator yourself will hold as the game goes on, and everyone gets the same 2 points. And so you'll do the same thing with these. You'll be taking the cards, and you'll be making essentially these little stacks like this. So at the end, you're going to have 12 total stacks, 6 from the fed team and 6 from the mob team. Now you'll be assigning a rat to this feds team as well, but just like the mob team, there's 2 roles that you cannot assign the rat to, and those are the same counterparts to the mob's team that you could not assign them to. In this case, on the feds, you cannot assign them to the federal marshal or the internal affairs. Now, if you are playing with this role, you won't be dealing out a password to them at the beginning of the game, because after 15 minutes, they'll decide what team they're on, they'll go to the moderator will give them one of those password cards from that team that they held off to the side as I showed earlier. And also, this role cannot be assigned the rat card either. So here we have all 12 of those stacks that we showed you how to assemble, and you're going to be giving these out to each player in the game secretly. So for example, this is one of the stacks that we had assembled earlier. Remember, the boss actually got more than 1 password. They got all the passwords on that team. And so you, as the moderator, are going to take one of these roll sheets from this stack. You're going to keep this secret from everybody else, because this is the key to the game and how you're going to help facilitate the game. Is you're going to have the roll, you're going to give give these to a player, and you're going to write that player's name here, and you'll write down the passwords here, in this case, both of them, because that's the boss. Now you'll do this secretly for all of those 11 other stacks of cards, so because there's a total of 12 players, this is the 12th player right there. So once you've written them all down, you'll have the names, you'll have their passwords, you'll have shown which player is the rat. You're then going to start passing these stacks of cards out to those corresponding players. For example, Dan is going to get the boss stack. So you have this whole stack here, it's just the boss, and you're going to secretly be giving this stack to Dan. Now you're going to be doing this the same for the other ones as well. All these players on the other team, they're going to be getting the stacks of those roles as you have assembled them earlier, as I just showed. Now, when you're passing out these stacks, you're going to want to do them in somewhat random order of both different teams so that nobody can really tell which team anybody is on. In addition to giving them their cards, you're also going to give each player a role sheet as well that they can use to try to take notes and figure out what they're learning throughout the game. Then, on a table where everyone can sort of walk around and see, you're going to lay out all the power cards. Now, there's multiple cards of each power card. For example, wiretap and wiretap. Put them together, and even one of the cards has 3 of them, like the stick-up. And you'll want them to be able to see these because over the course of the game, players are going to be able to spend a point card in order to get a power card, and it gives them a special power like seeing other people's cards or taking point cards from them. Then once you've assigned all those cards, you'll essentially tell each player what side of the password you're going to use, the white background with the blue word or vice versa, and so they know which password is theirs. And then you're going to start the 60-minute timer and the game is going to begin. The object of the game is to be on the winning team at the end of the 60 minutes. Now there's 2 teams. There's the mob team and there's the feds team. Each player is going to be giving a stack of cards, which is going to give them a role with a special ability, and it's going to tell you what team you're on. You can show people your cards if you want to, but it's generally not a good idea at the beginning until you figure out which people you think you can trust. Now what you're trying to do is find out the roles of the other players on the opposite team and what their password or passwords are. Also, each team is going to have a rat that will be assigned to one of the roles, and they're not actually working for the team that they're supposed to be working for. They're secretly working for the other team, and you're trying to find out who is the rat on your own team that's actually working for the other team, because you'll get points for that as well. And you'll also get points for each point card you have. Players start with some of these, and you'll be using these to buy different cards to do different things, and there's different ways to pass these around through other people and get points that way. Now there are no turns in this game. It's 60 minutes long and you can just walk around talking to people. You can talk in groups, you can talk secretly with people. When you're trying to be having a conversation and dropping your password in that conversation to see if maybe somebody else has that password, because if so, then they're on your team, because roughly 3 of you on the same team will have the same password. So you're trying to figure out who might be on the same team as you, listening to their conversations. Now you can show any or all of your cards to anyone you want, but you want to be very careful about when you do that because you're giving up a lot of information. You want to be pretty sure that that player is on your team. Also, you cannot exchange cards other than the point cards with anybody by default unless a power card tells you you can. Because over the course of the game, you can go over to where these power cards are, and once per game, you can spend one of your point cards to take one of these cards and use the ability as shown. And as I mentioned earlier, some of them allow you to do different things with cards, like the deep cover allows you to receive one of the other team's passwords from the moderator. So that's the only way that you can get cards like that from other people. Now when using a power card on a player, some of them might ask you to know something about them. For example, this says, to use, you must know the role of that player. So you could go up to a player, you could say, I'm using this stick-up card, I know that you are role X, whatever it is. If they're right, that player has to do what this says, which is take 1 point card from that player. However, if they're wrong, the player who got it wrong has to give a point card to the player that they were wrong to. If they don't have any point cards to pay, they have to show this player all of their cards. But keep in mind, players who have a power card used against them have to be honest when someone is guessing their role or password. Now, players can and should lie a lot throughout the game, but not in that moment. Also, players cannot run from or evade someone who's using a power card on them. So over the course of the game, you're really just trying to find out who's on your team, who's on the other teams, what are the passwords of those, trying to figure out who the rat is on your team. And as you're going through those, some abilities are going to come into play. Like if someone was trying to force this person to do something with their password, like show it to them or something like that, this player can, if they want to, show them their role and the ability to say, hey, I'm immune to these, but you're giving them a lot of information. If you don't want to show that and you don't want to use that, you can do what they told you to do if you decide to do things like that. Now the moderator themselves will actually have the key as to who is everybody and what's everyone's passwords. By the way, if you have any rule questions about anything's on your cards, what you can or can't do, ask the moderator. They're there to help you. And if you need to ask them something secretly, you can pull them aside from everybody else and do it quietly. Now they have the key of everything on who is who on both teams. Each player, like yourself, has a blank sheet at the beginning of the game. Again, what you're trying to do is find out who is what role, what are their secret passwords, because you're going to be getting points for those at the end. So as the game's going on, you'll be writing down who you think is what role, what player they are, and what their passwords are for the other team. But of course you're going to want to keep this secret because you don't want anybody to be able to figure out what team you are on just by looking at that. Now after the 60 minutes is over, the moderator is going to send everybody to certain sides of the room. Anyone that has a mob card will go to one side, anyone that has the feds is going to go to the other side. If you have the rat card, you still go to the side that it says on your card and you don't let anyone know that you're yet the rat. Then what's going to happen is each of the teams are going to discuss which player in their side they think is the rat. They'll discuss it for probably usually around 10 minutes or so, and then they'll do a vote and that they'll try to figure out who it is. And then we're going to go on to final scoring. So here we have the moderator's perfect key of all the players. This is the Fed side. Now this team was the mob side, so this is the side of the people that they were trying to figure out from that Fed side. Now they actually said that they thought on their team John was the rat, and in fact on the mob side John indeed was the rat. If they get the rat correct, they'll get 10 points, which I've circled up here. They're also going to get points for every player on their side that had any one of these +1 point cards. They'll get a point for that. So let's say they had 6 of those, so 6 points. Then they're going to get 1 point for every correct password and or player name. So here they thought Stephanie was a federal marshal, but it wasn't as Jeff, so they got an X mark, but they did get the 2 passwords correct. And then all throughout here, they got all the people and the passwords correct, but they did get the person wrong. Those 2 people were swapped. So here they got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 more points that you would add to all of these, and then whatever team has the highest point total is the winner. And of course, the rat wins or loses with the team they were secretly working for. Now a couple of sort of additional exceptions to scoring. If you're playing with the Bootlegger and the Temperance Crusader, whatever side the whiskey is on, that team will additionally get 5 points. And if you're playing with the Falconer and Special Agent, the moderator is going to give you a target role on the other team, and if you can guess who that player is, an additional 2 points for your team, and they'll ask you up to 3 different roles for that, so you can get up to 6 points if you get all 3 of them right. Each team, the Falconer and or the Special X, will get to do that. Now for the moderator, if players come to you with questions, page 9 and after that has all sorts of specifics on the different roles and power card specifics. Well, I hope this helped you dive right into Speakeasy and get to the fun quicker than you normally would if you had to read the rulebook yourself. Now, if you have further questions about the rules, I've placed the link below me in the description of this video, and that's the best place to ask them since I'll be notified, but so will Waxwing Games.